Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and to today's video where I'm sharing another what I eat in a day with some vegan recipes that you can recreate. For breakfast this day I made my spelt and oat flour waffles. I shared this recipe in my previous 5 breakfasts I always eat video, and the written recipe is also over on my site, so I will spare going through it all again, but I forgot to mention that you don't necessarily need to purchase a waffle iron to make waffles. Before I got mine I was using silicone molds which you can just bake in the oven, and they work great. That being said, I haven't tried this recipe in the silicone mold since I now have the iron, but I don't see why it wouldn't work. I will only ever purchase a kitchen gadget when I know I will constantly use it and one that's good quality. So if you're looking for one, I would highly recommend this one by Sage. Also, you don't need to use spelt flour for this recipe. Regular plain flour works exactly the same. I just like to use spelt flour where I can. I can find it in my supermarket. There's not too much of a price difference, and it's generally more nutritious with more vitamins and minerals. I usually have some kind of yogurt and fruit with my waffles, so here I had some Alpro Greek style yogurt with some blueberries. I also added on some flaked almonds on the top and drizzled over some maple syrup. These are honestly so quick and easy to throw together in one bowl. It's the kind of breakfast that looks time consuming and something you'd make if you have a lot of time on your hands, but it takes me under 15 minutes to have these ready. They're so filling. Again, the slow release energy from the oats keeps me going right up until lunch, but they're not heavy, they're light, they're crispy on the outside and they're fluffy in the middle, and it doesn't get much better than waffles for breakfast, does it? For my lunch on this day, I had garlic mushrooms on toast with a butterbean spread. To first make the butterbean and artichoke spread, I drained a can of butter beans and I added those into my Magimix food processor. To that I then added some jarred artichokes. It was around 1/3 of a cup, along with a tablespoon of the herb and spice oil that they were in. I next grated in the zest of half an unwaxed lemon, and then I squeezed in the juice of half. I sprinkled in a good pinch of sea salt and seasoned with some black pepper, and then I just popped the lid on and blended that up until it was smooth and creamy. It takes a good 3 to 4 minutes on high speed, and you might just want to run a spatula around the bowl halfway through. I then set that aside to fry up some mushrooms. So I drizzled around a tablespoon of olive oil into a large pan on a medium heat, and I then added in 150 grams of mushrooms. I always love using a mix of mushrooms, so here I had some oyster, some shiitake and some chestnut mushrooms. I then increased the heat to medium-high and constantly kept them turning over. Eventually they'll turn the most amazing golden colour and be ever so slightly crispy on the outside. Once they had a nice golden colour to them, I then squeezed in some garlic puree, around a tablespoon. I added in some dried chilli flakes, some fresh parsley and some salt, and I just turned them over. I then cut up some of our homemade bread and I put a slice of that in the toaster to toast. I decided to have a salad with this as well, so while the bread was toasting I just chopped up some cherry tomatoes and cucumber. I then put some of the butterbean and artichoke spread on top of the toast. I used about half, I just like to pile it on, and then I added the mushrooms on top. Had a mixed leaf salad on the side with the tomatoes and the cucumber, and then I drizzled on some balsamic glaze as kind of like a dressing. I made this butterbean and artichoke spread as a base for a puff pastry tart recently, and I did grilled green veg on the top. I will link to that recipe below. It was so delicious. I could eat this spread by the spoonful. It's quite similar to hummus in a way, and it works really well as a dip on its own in that sense. But it is great on toast, especially with these mushrooms on top. But again, you could do this with grilled tomatoes, some grilled peppers, any kind of grilled veggies would work really nice. This was just a really good lunch. I love any kind of open sandwich. It's definitely one of my go-tos for something quick, easy and delicious. Later on after lunch I had some cherries. I'm really trying to get better at eating more fruit, and cherries are a fruit I've been loving recently. These were so juicy and fresh and so good straight out of a cold fridge. I had that with an iced tea latte. I've really been enjoying these too. This cold brew bottle is from Bird & Blend. You add 4 to 6 teaspoons of your favourite loose leaf tea and then fill the bottle with either water or juice or milk, lemonade, any combination you like. I used their Vicky's sponge cake tea, which has flavours of raspberry and vanilla. I paired that with oat milk, and you just leave it for 4+ hours. Overnight is best, and the lid filters the tea as you pour. Milky drinks are my go-to drinks, and these are so refreshing. It's so handy to have it already made up in the fridge, so I think I'll be making all kinds of these over the summer. And then dinner was actually a recipe test that I wanted to do. So this is my spinach and tofu ricotta cannelloni. I made a basic marinara sauce first by roughly and finely chopping up a white onion. I then crushed, peeled and minced 3 cloves of garlic. I heated a couple of tablespoons of olive oil in a large pan over on a medium heat. Then I added in the onion and the garlic, and I just fried them off until they softened down. I next added in a good pinch of sea salt, poured in a bottle of passata, a good quality passata, seasoned with some black pepper, and then I gave it all a really good stir through, and I just left that to simmer on low. For the filling, I first picked some parsley from my garden. Look how big these leaves are. I'm still not over it. I just chopped that up really finely. I then took my food processor and a block of silken tofu, which I just lightly patted dry. I added that into the food processor bowl, along with 1/3 cup of cashews, which I'd soaked overnight the night before. I just drained those off and added them in. I then added in 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. I'll link to my favourite one below, it's so cheesy. I grated in the zest of half a lemon and then squeezed in the juice of half a lemon. I added in the chopped parsley, a tablespoon of garlic puree, a good pinch of ground nutmeg, a good pinch of sea salt flakes, and then I seasoned with loads of black pepper. I then just blended that up until it was nice and smooth and creamy. Again, I just ran a spatula around the bowl to make sure it's all mixed in. I then took around 90 grams of fresh spinach in a sieve and poured boiling water straight from the kettle over it, over the sink, to wilt it down. And then I placed that on a clean tea towel in the centre, wrapped it all up, and then squeezed out the water from the spinach by twisting the tea towel. And this needs to be done several times really well, otherwise the water will just come out while baking and it will make the dish really watery. I then placed the spinach on a chopping board and just roughly chopped that up. And then I added it into the tofu mixture and pulsed it to lightly mix it through. I then set that aside and meanwhile put a large deep pan of water on to boil, added in a good pinch of salt and just a little oil. Once the water was rolling, I laid a clean tea towel down next to the pan and I took 4 lasagna sheets and put them in the water for 1 minute 40 seconds to be exact. They should be cooked enough to still hold their shape, but they can also be rolled up. I placed those on the tea towel, separated them out and then covered them up with another tea towel to stop them from cracking, while I put another 4 lasagna sheets into boil, and I did the same with those. Once they were cooked, I placed them on the tea towel and pressed the other one down on top of them. While they were cooling down slightly, I picked a handful of fresh basil and just tore that into the marinara sauce. I then took a square baking dish and I spread a spoonful of the marinara sauce as a base. I then uncovered 4 of my lasagna sheets and I took a good heaped tablespoon of the spinach and tofu ricotta filling, placed it at one end of the lasagna sheet, and then I just rolled the sheet up into a little tube, And then just to fill in the ends, I take a teaspoon and I push a little more filling in each side. I then lay them out in the base of the dish in the marinara sauce with the seam side facing down, and repeated the whole process until I'd done all 8. And once they were all in the baking dish, I then spooned the remaining marinara sauce over the top, making sure it was even so the pasta would cook properly underneath. I then sprinkled a handful of vegan cheddar cheese over the top. I took some more basil and tore it over, and then I like to just use the back of the spoon to really push the cheese into the sauce to help it melt a little easier. I had preheated my oven to 180 degrees Celsius already, so I placed it in the oven to bake for around 35 to 40 minutes until the cheese had melted into the sauce. I then served it up with some vegan feta, just sprinkled over, and with some basil leaves as well, and we had that with some more salad on the side. Yeah, as I said, I'm testing this recipe at the moment. I actually made it the week before, but I made it with a soy mince ragu filling, and then I had the idea of using my tofu ricotta filling that I've again made for a puff pastry tart. So this was the first time I made it with the tofu. It was really great in terms of flavour balance, really tasty. The filling is such a great vegan alternative, and rolling up the lasagna sheets works so well if you can't find pre-made cannelloni pasta. But I think it might need a bit more sauce. A lot of the sauce had dried out, so I might tweak that a little bit. Let me know what you think and if you would like this as a written recipe on my site, and if you do, I will get that posted for you very soon. Then for dessert, we shared these chocolates by Dawn's Chocolates. These are her handmade vegan dark chocolate caramel chocolates. The shell is an amazing dark chocolate, and they're filled with the most delicious vegan caramel. I had kept them in the fridge and they were so good. Would do it again, highly recommend. But at room temperature, the caramel is more runny. I love using my platform to shout out small businesses, and especially your businesses. So I will link to Dawn's Etsy store below. And that's another day on my plate. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, the recipes are below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye.